Don't put his name on the lease. It's signed. 12 months of planning ends tonight. What about the account? $62,400, untouched. And the blue key? In the envelope. Keep your voice down.
Judge Washington, your driver is waiting.
Not yet.
Why is Conrad Vale's seal on Bluebird?
You saw nothing.
That seal was destroyed 20 years ago. Then why is it on my wife's escape plan?
Quincy, don't touch that folder.
I came here to end my marriage. Now I want the truth.
You found out.
Not enough.
Lock the door.
Who took that?
My name is Quincy Thompson. I'm 43 years old, and for most of my life I have believed one simple thing. A man who keeps his pain quiet is protecting the people he loves. I was wrong about the protecting part. I spent 11 years in the Army doing protective intelligence. My job was reading rooms before something went wrong in them, reading faces, reading timelines, finding the one detail that didn't belong and pulling on it until the whole picture came apart. When I came home, I brought that skill to Meridian Children's Medical Center in Atlanta, where I run security and risk management for a hospital full of sick kids and terrified parents. 22 floors, 900 staff, cameras, badges, fire systems, access logs, all of it mine to watch. Which is why, on a Tuesday night 3 weeks before that dinner at my mother-in-law's house, I was alone in my office under the blue glow of a monitor, staring at an invoice that didn't belong. The hospital was preparing the biggest expansion in its history. A $180 million redevelopment, new treatment wings, housing for the families of patients, jobs for the neighborhood, the kind of project that gets a man's name carved into a lobby wall. The man whose name was going on that wall was Conrad Vale, 63 years old, real estate, chairman of the Meridian Foundation, the kind of man who shows up in a charcoal suit that costs more than a nurse makes in a month and shakes hands like he's handing out blessings. He funded scholarships. He funded shelters. He funded a program for women escaping dangerous homes, and he never once let a camera miss him doing it. Nobody questioned Conrad Vale in this city. Nobody had a reason to. Until I found an invoice buried in the security budget. Family Relocation Protection. Paid to a contractor that did not exist on any approved vendor list I had ever signed. Charged against money meant to protect sick children. At the bottom, in small type, a reference code. B period. B period. 12. I was still staring at it when my office door opened without a knock. "Working late, Quincy?" Conrad Vale filled the doorway, the way some men fill a room, easy and unhurried, like the building itself had been waiting for him. "Reconciling project security costs," I said. He glanced at my screen. Just a glance, half a second. But I have spent my whole life measuring half seconds, and I watched something behind his eyes go very still. "Some of those line items are community sensitive," he said, warm as ever. "Vulnerable families, confidential situations. I'd hate for good people to get hurt because a careful man got too curious." He smiled when he said it. That was the part I filed away. Not the words, the smile. "Of course," I said. He wished me a good night and left. I sat there a long moment listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway. Then I did what 11 years of training taught me to do when a powerful man tells you to stop looking at something. I copied everything. Quietly. to a drive that never touched the hospital network. I didn't know yet what BB-12 meant. I didn't know it would lead me to my own wife. Jamila came home late that Thursday. I heard her keys before I saw her. 14 years of marriage teaches you the sound of your wife arriving. That night the sound was different, careful. The way a person sets keys down when they don't want the metal to speak. She stepped into the hallway in a blush-pink blazer, her hair in that neat bun she has worn since the day I met her, and when she reached into her bag for her phone, something small fell to the hardwood floor. A key, navy blue, tied with a pastel pink ribbon. She picked it up so fast her knuckles went pale. "Office key," she said. "New wing." I have interviewed men who lied about weapons, about money, about where they were at 2 a.m. I know what a rehearsed answer sounds like. It sounds smooth, too smooth, like a stone that has been turned over in a pocket for a year. Her phone lit up on the counter between us. One notification, 5 words. Bluebird inspection complete. All clear. She turned the screen face down. And here's the part I'm not proud of. I didn't ask. 14 years of never asking, because asking meant conflict, and conflict meant raising the temperature in a house I had promised myself would always stay calm. My father never raised his voice. Neither did I. I thought that made me safe to live with. I was about to learn what my silence had actually built. That night, after she fell asleep, I went down to my study. Not to snoop. That's what I told myself. I was looking for our insurance paperwork. What I found, folded inside a folder that had been placed exactly where I would never look, was a bank statement. An account I had never seen. Opened 1 year ago, almost to the day. Jamila's name on it. Her maiden name. Balance. $62,400. I sat in that dark study for a long time. I didn't shake. I didn't pour a drink. I did what I always do. I went still. But inside that stillness, one question kept circling like a searchlight. What was my wife saving to escape from? Denise Cole had been my friend since before either of us could afford good shoes. Now she practiced family law out of an office in Midtown, with a view of the skyline and no patience for men who lied to her. I put the bank statement on her desk. "Is she having an affair?" Denise asked. "No." I surprised myself with how certain I sounded. "I don't know what this is. That's the problem, Denise. I don't know what anything in my marriage is anymore." She studied me the way lawyers study witnesses. "A private account isn't betrayal, Quincy. Plenty of women keep one, especially women who grew up watching their mothers trapped without one." I knew Jamila's history, pieces of it, her father, the locked bathroom door, the things Indira survived before she became the most respected family court judge in Fulton County. I knew the outline the way you know the shape of a country you've never visited. "Draw up the papers," I said. "I'm not filing yet. I just need to know I can." Denise agreed. Then, 2 days later, she called me at the hospital, and her voice had changed. "Quincy, the account isn't the only thing. There's a lease, a 2-bedroom in the old 4th Ward, rented under her maiden name." A pause. "Signed 12 months ago, the same week the account was opened." 12 months, an account, an apartment, a navy blue key on a pink ribbon. My wife hadn't been drifting away from me. She had been building a runway. That Sunday, we drove to her mother's townhouse in Inman Park for dinner, the way we had every Sunday for 14 years. The divorce papers rode under my navy coat like a folded verdict. I told myself I would get through the meal, shake hands, say grace, decide later. Then I heard my wife whispering in the kitchen about a lease, an account, and a blue key. And you already know what happened next. The photograph lay on Indira's dining table, between the greens and the good china. Me, in a navy jacket, walking into a building I had never entered in my life. "Who took that?" I asked again. Indira slid the photograph back into the folder with the practiced calm of a woman who had spent 30 years watching people fall apart in her courtroom and never once fallen apart with them. "Sit down, Quincy." "I'll stand." Jamila hadn't moved. Her hands were folded in her lap, the way she folds them at board meetings, and her eyes were on the divorce papers I had set on the table. And for one strange moment, I realized we had both walked into that room carrying an ending. Hers had just taken a year longer to write. "Is it true?" I asked her. Quiet. I get quieter when it matters. "The apartment, the account, 12 months. "Yes." No excuse, no tears. Just yes. "Have I ever hit you?" "No." "Threatened you, taken your money, your keys, your freedom?" "No, Quincy, never." "Then help me understand what you were running from." She looked at me then, really looked, and her voice came out steadier than I expected and sadder than I feared. "I wasn't running from anything you did. I needed to know there was a door I could open without asking anyone's permission. That's all it was supposed to be, a door." "I didn't plan to destroy you, Quincy. I planned to make sure you could never trap me." The words landed like something dropped from a great height, not because they were cruel, because they were honest. And I couldn't find myself anywhere inside them. Indira's voice cut in, judge flat. "You wake up screaming, Quincy. You broke a lamp last spring. You go quiet for days, and no one in this family knows where you go inside that silence. A careful woman prepares." "A careful woman," I said slowly, "doesn't need Conrad Vale's seal on her preparation." The room stopped. Indira's composure flickered just once, like a light in a storm. "That seal was destroyed 20 years ago," she said. "Whoever put it on that folder is not protecting my daughter." I picked up my divorce papers. I left the photograph. And I walked out of that townhouse into the October dark with a question burning a hole through everything I thought I knew. If the plan was Jamila's, and the fear was Jamila's, whose plan was the folder? What I didn't hear, and what I would only learn much later, was the phone that rang in Indira's kitchen 4 minutes after my taillights disappeared. Conrad Vale's voice, smooth as poured concrete, asking one question. Did he see the seal? The counterattack came on a Wednesday, and it came wearing a suit. I had requested 10 minutes before the Meridian Board to present what I had found. Phantom vendors, payments routed through a relocation fund that had officially closed years ago, access records showing contractor badges moving through restricted floors at hours no contractor works. I presented facts, dates, numbers, no theories. Conrad Vale never argued with a single one of them. That was the first thing that scared me. Instead, he waited until I finished, folded his hands, and said, gently, like a man reluctantly doing his duty, "Before we evaluate these documents, I believe the board should evaluate the man presenting them." A folder appeared, an anonymous complaint. Words like volatile, obsessive, concerning behavior at home. At home. I watched 12 board members read a description of a stranger wearing my face, and I watched my wife, seated at the end of the table as Director of Community Partnerships, say absolutely nothing. Her silence wasn't betrayal. I know that now. It was a woman watching her most private fear read aloud in a boardroom and realizing she didn't know how it got there. But the room didn't hear silence. The room heard confirmation. Dr. Lydia Grant, chairwoman of the medical board, 70 years old, a retired pediatric surgeon with hands that had held more dying children than any human being should have to, looked at me over her glasses. "Mr. Thompson, pending an independent review, I am suspending your access. This protects you as much as the institution." Maybe she believed that. Lydia Grant was not Conrad's creature. She was careful, and careful people can be steered. Conrad made sure the last part happened in the lobby in front of my own staff. "Your badge, Quincy. 14 years, 900 employees. Nurses I had walked to their cars at midnight, fathers I had talked down from the worst moments of their lives quietly in stairwells, where no report would ever embarrass them. Not one of them looked at me. I unclipped the badge. I set it on the desk. I did not slam it. I did not speak. A man who has to yell to be heard has already lost the room. Only one person met my eyes, Malik Reyes, 34, my systems analyst, brilliant with machines, terrified of powerful men. He stepped close, pretending to collect paperwork, and spoke without moving his lips much at all. "Sir, the logo on that anonymous complaint, the formatting code in the corner," he swallowed. "It matches the invoice. Somebody built this file before you ever found the account." 3 days later, the story went public. A local station ran it at 6 in the evening. Hospital security director under review. Sources confirm the executive's own wife maintained a confidential safety plan. They filmed me walking to my truck. A reporter shouted the question they're trained to shout. "Sir, did you ever threaten your wife?" Here is what I could have said. I could have held up the lease, the account, the year of planning. I could have fed Jamila to the same cameras that were eating me alive. I said nothing. Not because I'm noble, because somewhere under the wreckage, I understood one thing with total clarity. Whoever built that file wanted me to attack her. The trap only worked if I became the man in it. To understand what happened next, you have to understand 2 children. The first was a 7-year-old girl in a house on the south side of this city, sitting on the cold edge of a bathtub at 11 at night, her mother's arms around her, both of them listening to a key. Jamila learned to read her father's mood from the sound of his key in the front door. Slow and fumbling meant hide. Sharp and fast meant be perfect. She learned it the way other children learn the alphabet. And a lesson learned that young doesn't live in your mind. It lives in your body. Indira got them out, built a new life, then a legal career, then a judgeship, then a quiet network that moved endangered women to safety before their husbands ever knew they were gone. The program had a code name, Bluebird, and the man who wrote its early checks, who provided its apartments, who stood beside the brave lady judge at every fundraiser, was a young developer named Conrad Vale. The second child was me, or the man that child became. My last deployment, I made a call, a route I cleared, a vehicle I waved through. My friend went home missing pieces of himself, and I went home whole. And I've spent every year since holding my breath around the people I love, because I decided a trustworthy man is a man who never lets anyone see the storm. I never told Jamila about the diagnosis. The letters PTSD never crossed my lips in my own house. When the nightmares came, I slept on the couch and blamed my back. When my hands shook, I put them in my pockets. I thought I was protecting her. I was handing her silence. And silence, to a woman raised on the sound of a key, is not peace. It is the moment before. 1 year ago, I woke from a nightmare with my heart trying to break out of my chest, and my arm caught the bedside lamp and it exploded against the wall. I never touched her. I never came close, but I saw her face in the dark, frozen. 7 years old again. I swept up the glass. I said I was sorry. I went to work. She called her mother, and her mother, God help us all, called the counselor Conrad Vale's foundation had so generously provided. That was the first entry in the Bluebird file. And here's the thing you need to hold on to as this story turns. That first entry was true. It was everything that came after that was built. Malik confirmed it, hunched over a laptop in my father's old garage, walking me through metadata like a surgeon narrating an operation. Pages in the file created before the incidents they described. Documents authored on a server registered to the Vale Community Protection Network. Surveillance photographs of me, my schedule, my license plate, pulled from systems only someone inside the hospital could reach. And the photograph. Me entering the building I had never seen. "Look at your watch, sir," Malik said, zooming in. "The date on the smart display. You were on shift at the hospital that day. 14 witnesses, and the doorway, that's not the apartment building. That's the east annex behind the hospital. Same architect, same brick. They cropped it and wrote a new caption. Not a masterpiece of forgery, just a lie with good lighting. So the question," Malik said quietly, "is why a billionaire donor is spending money making a security director look dangerous." I already knew the answer. I had found it 3 weeks ago, glowing on a screen at midnight, because the security director had found the money. I went to the old 4th Ward on a gray Tuesday afternoon. I had the address from Denise. I did not have the key. I would not have used it if I did. A man under suspicion does not open his wife's escape hatch with his own hands. He stands in the hallway, and he watches, and he waits. Through the open door, a maintenance man was replacing a smoke detector. I saw what a year of fear looks like when it's given a floor plan, folded clothes, a pharmacy bag, an envelope of cash, copies of documents, a packed bag by the door, the kind you can lift in one motion. And on the wall, a timeline, my name, dates, incidents, some in my wife's careful handwriting, some in handwriting that was not hers. Pinned at the center, the photograph. Me, entering this building. The lie that turned a frightened woman's door into a case file. "You're the husband." The voice came from the doorway across the hall. A woman in her 60s, silver hair, a cardigan, eyes that missed nothing. Evelyn Shaw, 30 years a nurse, 11 of them at Meridian, retired into a building that Conrad Vale's redevelopment maps had quietly marked for demolition. "I recognize you from the news," she said, "and from the hospital back when. You walked me to the bus stop one winter when a patient's daddy was following me. You didn't write it up, you just walked with me." "I didn't remember. That's the truth. You don't remember the nights that were just Tuesday to you." She remembered. "2 men come by this floor," she said, "every week or so. They check that apartment. They take pictures. They don't live here. Men who live somewhere walk different." She reached into her cardigan pocket and pressed a slip of paper into my hand. "One of them dropped this in the stairwell last month. I kept it. Old nurses keep everything." A receipt. Payment processing. Rent 12 months, this unit. Paid by Vale Urban Holdings. I stood in that hallway and felt the whole machine assemble itself in front of me. The apartment my wife believed was her secret was a company asset. The counselor shaping her fear was on a foundation payroll. The file documenting my danger was authored on Conrad's servers. Evelyn watched my face and said the sentence I will hear for the rest of my life. "They weren't waiting for your wife to run, baby. They were waiting for her to get scared enough to vote." Because Jamila wasn't just my wife. She was the director of community partnerships. The community's voice on a $180 million deal that would level this very building. A frightened woman, dependent on Conrad's protection, does not vote against Conrad's project. And a disgraced husband cannot audit it. That was when the elevator opened and Jamila stepped into the hallway and saw me standing outside her secret door. I watched a year of fear catch fire in her eyes. "You found it," she whispered. "You found me." "Jamila, the photograph in your file. It existed before I ever knew this address. I can prove—" "Stop!" Her voice cracked down the middle. "Every time I build a wall, you're already on the other side of it. Do you understand how that feels? Stay away from me, Quincy." She was wrong about me, and she was right about how it felt. Both things were true at once, and I had no language that could hold them both, because I had spent 14 years refusing to learn one. I left. I did not argue in that hallway. Some cases you cannot win as a husband. You can only win them as a witness. Have you ever watched someone you love be afraid of you for reasons that were never yours? Comment 1 if you believe Quincy should have kept fighting to explain himself that day. Comment 2 if walking away was the only move that could save them both. Pick one. I read these. The gala was held on the rooftop of the Meridian Foundation Tower on a clear, cold Friday in November. Donors, surgeons, 2 councilmen, local press with cameras that cost more than cars, a string quartet, and at the center of it all, Conrad Vale in a midnight tuxedo moving through the crowd like weather. Jamila stood near the podium in a pastel pink gown because the community face of the deal is required at the announcement of the deal. She looked composed. I had learned too late what her composure costs her. I was there in a navy tuxedo for one reason only. Lydia Grant had summoned me to a closed session scheduled after the announcement. My review, my verdict. Conrad found me by the railing before the speeches. "Quincy," he said my name warmly for the benefit of everyone within earshot. Then, loud enough to carry, "Good of our former security director to join us." Former. 2 syllables, and every head within 30 feet turned. Glasses paused. A councilman's wife whispered behind her hand. I felt my status leave my body in real time, the way heat leaves a house with an open door. I said nothing. I had learned what my silence was worth to these people. Tonight, I intended to spend it carefully. At 9:16 in the evening, the fire alarm sounded. Not the rooftop, the tower below us. The pediatric family wing, where out-of-town parents sleep beside their sick children. Then the elevators locked. Then, according to the panicked security radio, a young guard was gripping near the bar. The cameras on the family floors went dark, and Conrad Vale took the microphone and said the words that told me everything about him. "Folks, please stay where you are. It's certainly a false alarm. Let's not let a glitch ruin an historic evening." I was already moving. Because here is what nobody on that rooftop knew. Fire systems have a grammar. Real fires spread. Zones trip in sequence, following heat, following air. This alarm had fired in 3 zones at once, non-adjacent, in a pattern no fire in the physical world produces. Somebody had typed this emergency, which meant somebody wanted chaos on the family floors on the exact night the deal was announced. Chaos that a suspended security director could be blamed for, or better, chaos that would prove the hospital needed Conrad's hand-picked replacement. I took the stairs, 14 flights down, into smoke machine haze and screaming strobes and a hallway of parents in nightclothes carrying children with 1V poles. Suspension is a word on paper. Those hallways were mine. I found the young guards frozen at a locked crossover door and gave them what they needed. Not volume, direction, short words, clear tasks. This stairwell, not that one. Count doors. Check the playroom. I have de-escalated crowds in places where panic gets people killed, and I will tell you the secret. Fear is a current, and a calm voice is a channel, and people will pour themselves into any channel that sounds like it knows the way. Then a mother grabbed my sleeve, and the floor dropped out of the night. Her daughter was missing, 8 years old, waiting on a heart, separated in the surge. The cameras were dark, but dark cameras still logged their own dying, and the blackout had swept the floor west to east. So had the crowd. A frightened child moves against a crowd, not with it, toward the familiar. I found her in the east playroom under the craft table, holding a plastic dinosaur, exactly where the machines couldn't see and the adults hadn't thought. I knelt down slow, put my hands where she could see them. "Hey, I'm Quincy. I do the same thing when it gets loud." I nodded at the table. "Good cover. Want to go find your mom?" She reached up and took my hand. When I carried her out of that stairwell into the lobby, into the lights, into her mother's arms, the cameras from the rooftop had made it downstairs. Every one of them was rolling. You would think a man watches a child come out of a stairwell and says thank you. Conrad Vale reached the lobby, took in the cameras, and made a different calculation. "This man is suspended," he announced, voice ringing off the marble. "He violated a direct order tonight. And I think we all have to ask ourselves how convenient it is that a security emergency occurred on the one night the man who ran our security systems for 14 years wanted to look like a hero." The crowd murmured, "Doubt is cheap," and Conrad bought it in bulk. Then he went further. He always goes further. That is the flaw in men like him. They cannot leave a wounded thing alone. "And perhaps," he said, softer, sadder, a surgeon of reputations, "we should ask why this man's own wife, our own director of community partnerships, spent the past year preparing to escape him. There is a file. Some of you have seen tonight's reporting, a safety plan, an apartment, a frightened woman." Phones lit up across the lobby. The file, or pieces of it, pushed to inboxes in real time. He had staged this, too. I stood in the center of that room with a child's plastic dinosaur still in my jacket pocket, and let the humiliation come. I did not defend myself. I didn't have to. Because Jamila walked to the microphone. Pastel pink gown, hands steady. And she did the single bravest thing I have ever watched a human being do. She refused to lie in either direction. "Everything in that file is real," she said. And the room went dead silent. "The apartment is real. The account is real. I hired a divorce attorney. My fear was real. I am not ashamed of a safety plan. My mother's life was saved by one." She found my face in the crowd. "But hear the rest. My husband has never hit me. He has never threatened me. He has never taken my money, my keys, or my freedom, not once in 14 years. Her voice caught and held. "I built a door because of a childhood he didn't cause. And someone in this room took my fear, rewrote it, photographed it, and turned it into a weapon. I want to know who edited my life." You could hear the building breathe. Conrad reached for the microphone with a chuckle prepared, and Dr. Lydia Grant stepped between him and the podium, 70 years of authority in a single raised hand. "Mr. Vale, you have made a public accusation. Fine. We will resolve it publicly." She turned to me. "Mr. Thompson, you claim expertise. Tonight was a breach of a building you know better than anyone alive. Explain it. All of it. Right now. If you truly are what you say you are, show us." Conrad smiled because he believed he had built a night that could not be explained. He had forgotten who taught the building to speak. They gave me a laptop, a projector, and a room full of donors, doctors, reporters, and one fire marshal who had just arrived and was not amused. I gave them the truth, one timestamp at a time. The alarm activation. 3 non-adjacent zones triggered within 1 second of each other. "Fire moves," I said. "Software doesn't have to." The elevator lockdown, initiated not by the fire panel, but by a maintenance override entered from a contractor account. I put the badge history on the screen. The account belonged to a subcontractor on the redevelopment project. A subcontractor owned, through 2 holding companies, by Vale Urban Holdings. The camera blackout, a firmware update pushed to the family wing cameras at 9:14 in the evening, 2 minutes before the alarm. Scheduled updates run at 3 in the morning. Always. Somebody moved this one by hand. And then the call. A voice call to the control room at 9:15, telling my young guards to hold their positions, that it was a drill. I played the log. The call came from an extension in the Foundation offices. The fire marshal reviewed the panel history himself in front of everyone. Then he straightened up and gave the room one sentence in the flat voice of a man whose testimony has ended careers. This system did not fail. It was instructed. Authority is a strange thing. It is invisible right up until the moment it changes hands, and in that moment, everyone in the room feels the weight move. The weight moved. And then it broke Conrad's one unbreakable wall, because Indira Washington walked to the front of the room. Retired Chief Judge Washington in her gray silk, 68 years old, carrying a Navy folder. 20 years ago, she said, I helped create a program called Bluebird. It moved women and children out of dangerous homes. Every authentic relocation file carried a seal. When the program passed to independent oversight, every seal was ordered destroyed. I burned mine myself. She paused. The custody log for the remaining seals bears one signature. The man who handled our logistics, our leases, and our storage. She laid the register on the projector. Conrad Vale's signature. Line after line after line. The file assembled against Quincy Thompson carries a Bluebird seal, Indira said, which means it was manufactured by the only man who kept one. Conrad stopped smiling. Judge, you are a confused old woman being used by a violent man. The room actually gasped. Not at the accusation, at the mask coming off. He tried to recover. He offered right there to fund an independent review. Then his attorney touched his elbow, and Conrad Vale did the most honest thing he did all night. He went quiet. 1 week later, in a private conference room, he made me the offer men like him always make. Reinstatement. A settlement. The press handled. All I had to do was sign a non-disclosure, end the audit, publicly call my wife's file a family misunderstanding, and separate from Jamila so the story would die with the marriage. You can keep your reputation or keep your wife, Quincy, not both. I looked at him a long moment. You've spent your whole life buying doors, I said. You still don't understand people who won't walk through them. I walked out. He went to the city oversight hearing and played his last card. A recording captured by the counselor's app on Jamila's nightstand of me screaming through a nightmare. He played my worst 3 a.m. to a room full of strangers and called it proof. I stood up. I did not deny it. That is what post-traumatic stress sounds like, I said. I brought it home from serving this country, and I was too proud to treat it, and that pride cost my marriage more than I knew. But hear me, an episode is not an assault. Fear deserves protection. It does not deserve fabricated evidence. And Jamila, under oath, testified to all of it. The counselor who rewrote her neutral words into alarming ones, the entries she never authored, the warning calls that came whenever her fear cooled, someone always ready to tell her I had started following her. The photograph that kept her afraid, the $31,000 a rapid audit found flowing into her account from a shuttered Bluebird restitution fund, money Conrad had been washing through the one account no investigator would ever question because it belonged to a frightened wife. Her fear had been real. It had also been farmed. The Meridian Board met on a Thursday morning, And Dr. Lydia Grant did not waste words. The $180 million deal suspended. Conrad Vail removed from the foundation. His financial records referred to the district attorney and the state. The families in the redevelopment zone, including a retired nurse named Evelyn Shaw, protected in writing before a single shovel would ever touch the ground. And a new independent office of security and ethics answering to no donor ever. Then Lydia turned to me. "Mr. Thompson, your badge is on my desk. I would like to return it." I took it back on 4 conditions, and I made them say yes to every one in the minutes of the meeting. No individual would ever privately control the Bluebird system again. Every safety plan would belong to the person it protected, her file, her words, her right to read every page. No developer, donor, or contractor would touch the data, and every relocation dollar would be audited by outsiders with no name on any lobby wall. Lydia signed it. Then she stood, this small iron woman, and shook my hand in front of the full board. 14 years, she said. This hospital was safe, and none of us ever asked why. That was our failure, not yours. Malik Reyes was promoted to deputy director that afternoon. He called his mother from the parking deck. I know because I watched him do it, grinning like a kid, and something in my chest unclenched for the first time in months. But that was the public ending. The real one happened that night at my own kitchen table. Jamila came to the house at 8 in the evening. The divorce papers were on the table. I hadn't signed them. I hadn't shredded them either. For weeks they had sat there like a question neither of us was ready to answer out loud. She sat down across from me. Then she reached into her bag and she set the navy blue key with the pastel pink ribbon beside the papers. 2 colors tied together, resting next to the document built to cut them apart. "I'm not going to ask you to forgive me," she said. "I spent a year building an exit from a man who never once gave me cause, and I let other people hold the pen that wrote my fear. That's mine to carry. I'm not handing it to my mother, and I'm not handing it to Conrad. It's mine." I looked at that key a long time. "I owe you a confession too," I said. I told myself my silence was a gift. 14 years I hid the nightmares, the diagnosis, the nights I sat in the truck in the driveway until my hands stopped shaking. I thought I was sparing you. I shook my head slowly. I wasn't sparing you, Jamila. I was starving you. I gave you an empty room and got angry that you filled it with your worst memory. Her eyes shone, but she held steady. We were done performing calm for each other. This was the real thing, which is quieter and much harder. "Are you still going to file?" she asked. I put my hand flat on the papers. "Not tonight," I said. "But not filing isn't the same as pretending we're healed." So we made an agreement. The unromantic kind that actually holds weight. Separate places for a season. Therapy together every week, no cancellations. My treatment out loud and on the calendar, no more hiding the storm. Her work, learning to tell the difference between the key turning in the door today and the key turning in a door 30 years ago. And her mother, whom we both love, who saved hundreds of women and never once saved herself, outside our marriage's walls for good. Indira took it better than I expected. Then again, she took it the same week she sat across from a therapist of her own for the first time in her life, a retired judge finally letting somebody else hear the case she had carried alone for 3 decades. Healing, it turns out, does not look like a hug in the rain. It looks like appointments kept. Conrad Vale spent the next year with attorneys instead of donors. Financial fraud, misuse of protected data. The redevelopment went forward without him, smaller, slower, honest. New treatment wings, family housing, and not one displaced neighbor. Evelyn Shaw cut the ribbon on her own block. I stood in the back and clapped until my hands hurt. And on a bright Saturday in October, 1 year after a photograph slid across a dining table and broke my life open, we opened Bluebird House. Temporary housing, legal aid, trauma counseling, run independent, funded clean, and built on one absolute rule. No donor, no sponsor, no powerful friend of anyone ever touches a name inside those walls. In the entry hall, mounted in a small glass case, hangs a navy blue key on a pastel pink ribbon. The plaque beneath it reads, "A door should protect. It should never be used to control the story behind it." That evening we went back to Inman Park for Sunday dinner, 1 day early, because some traditions deserve to be rewritten on your own schedule. This time, nobody whispered in the kitchen. No folder hid under the table. Jamila told her mother about a hard week, out loud, at full volume, unrehearsed. I talked about a nightmare I'd had on Tuesday. Just said it, plainly, passed the cornbread, and watched nothing terrible happen. Indira listened to both of us, and for the first time in living memory, did not offer a plan. She just reached across the table and held her daughter's hand. Jamila moved back home in the spring, not because a boardroom vindicated me, because a year of Tuesdays did. Therapy appointments and honest mornings and 2 people learning, slowly, clumsily, that safety isn't the absence of an exit. It's the presence of the truth. Some nights now, when she comes home, I hear her keys at the door, and I watch her walk in without bracing, without reading the sound, without her body preparing for a man who died a long time ago. For the first time in our marriage, neither of us needed an escape route from the truth. That is what we won. Not a lawsuit, not a headline. A front door that is only a front door. This story reminds us that fear is a faithful guard dog, but it cannot tell time. It will bark at footsteps from 30 years ago as loudly as footsteps on the porch tonight. And there will always be someone, a Conrad, polished and generous and patient, willing to feed that dog for their own reasons. The people we love do not need our silence. They need our truth, delivered while it is still small enough to carry together. A safety plan is sacred. A secret is a wall. Only one of them keeps a family standing. So tell me in the comments, have you ever called something protection when it was really fear making the decision for you? And if someone in your life has been judged by a story they were never allowed to answer, share this one with them. It might be the door they've been waiting for someone to open.